Hello, this is Shula, and in today's video, we will talk about balancing chemical equations. So let's start with some introduction first. So, the principle behind balancing chemical equations is a principle of conservation of mass, which states that in chemical reactions, mass is neither created nor destroyed. So that means that when we have a chemical reaction and when reactants get converted to products, the number of each type of atom on the left side has to equal the number of each type of atom on the right side. And this is how we can do some examples here. So let's start with the first example. And in this example, propanol reacts with oxygen to produce carbon dioxide and water. So we can see immediately that this reaction is not balanced because, for example, we have three carbons on the left side and we have just one carbon on the right side. And same goes for hydrogens and oxygens. It's not balanced. So my students ask me a lot, okay, so we know we need to balance this equation, but how do we know which atom we need to start with? So the answer is you always start with atoms that occur in more complex substances. So if you look at this equation, so you see that the most complex substance here is propanol, right? And propanol has carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, but carbon also occurs in carbon dioxide, and it makes sense to start with carbon. So we start with carbon, and to balance it, what do we do? We add coefficient of 3 to carbon dioxide. And now that it's balanced, now that we have exactly three carbons on the left and on the right, now we can continue to either hydrogen or oxygen. So another rule states that that the atoms that are free elements always go last. And our oxygen here is free element, so it goes last, and that leaves us with hydrogen as a second atom that we balance. So if you look on the left side, we have 8 hydrogens, and on the right side, we have 2 hydrogens. So we balance hydrogens by adding coefficient of 4 to the right side of the equation right here. Yeah, so now our hydrogens are balanced and we're only left with oxygens to balance, which is going to be a little tricky because, as you will see, the problem is that we have oxygen in two parts of the equation. We have oxygen as part of propanol and we have oxygen as free element. So that oxygen that's part of the propanol we can't touch, we can't change that, we can't add coefficient to propanol because that will throw off our measurements of carbon and hydrogen, which we already balanced. So we can only do oxygen at this point. And of course, you can do it in your head, but I figured we can create a little equation. So 1 is referring to 1 oxygen in the propanol plus 2K. K is the coefficient that we will add to that double molecule of oxygen, right? Equals to 3 times 2, referring to the number of oxygen in the carbon dioxide, plus 4, which is the number of oxygens in water. So we just do some algebra that equals to 1 plus 2k equals to 10. And if we subtract 1 from both sides of the equation, we get 2k is equal to 9. And then if we divide both sides of the equation by 2, we get k is equal to 9 over 2. And 9 over 2 is in fact our coefficient here. Yes, sometimes you can have coefficients that are fractions, and it's okay. It will just require another step. And the step is right here. So once you add your coefficient, you have to multiply the whole equation by the denominator of that coefficient. So the way it works, you have a fraction, right? Fraction has a numerator, which is a number on top, and has a denominator, which is the number on the bottom. So when you multiply any fraction by its denominator, then the denominator gets cancelled out, and you end up with a whole number. So in this case, we multiply the whole equation by 2. Yeah, so if you see here, I put square brackets around the whole equation, and this is how we end up with 2 molecules of propanol multiplied by, plus 9 oxygens. And that gives us 6 molecules of carbon dioxide and 8 molecules of water. And this is our final balanced equation. So, like I said, we start with atoms that occur in more complex substances first, and and then atoms that are free elements go last. So let's do another example. So another example involves acid. So we have solid aluminum that reacts with sulfuric acid to produce aluminum sulfate and hydrogen gas. So this equation is not balanced either. And let's decide which atom we start with. And since the most complex substances here are sulfuric acid and aluminum sulfate, and they both have sulfur, I will start with sulfur. Yes, so right here we start with sulfur, and since we have 3 sulfurs on the right side and just 1 on the left, we add coefficient of 3 to sulfuric acid, and this is how we balance the sulfur. And this is just a cool picture I wanted to share with you guys. I found it online. So you know that sulfuric acid is a major contributor to acid rain. And here you see a picture of the statue, very ancient statue that was eroded by acid rain. So yeah, just a side point. Okay, so now that we balanced sulfurs, I think we should balance the oxygens, because oxygens also occur in both of those complex substances. And yeah, so we have a pleasant surprise. Oxygens are already balanced. We don't need to do anything. And now we're just left with balancing aluminum and hydrogen, and they're both free elements. So that should be fairly easy to balance. And what we do is we add coefficient of 2 to solid aluminum on the left side, and we add coefficient of 3 to hydrogen gas on the right side, and that gives us 6 atoms of hydrogen, and this balances this equation. Yeah, so our equation is perfectly balanced, and I hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you did, hit that like button, and make sure to subscribe to my channel. I'll be posting more educational videos like this on biology, chemistry, and algebra, because those are the subjects that I tutor. And I'll be using different ways to present. This was Prezi, and I really like Prezi, even though it's really not so convenient when it comes to math and chemistry. So I'll also use whiteboard and Zoom, and I'll use PowerPoint. So just tune in, and you won't miss upcoming videos. So Hope you enjoyed. Bye bye.